What up, what up? It's your homeboy Maul the Pimp, aka MTP, and welcome to another special edition of the Pimpoholic Tv Podcast. This is different right here. I got a very special guest here. This is going to be real educational right here. This lady right here, you've seen her for years in the Chattanooga courtroom. You've either not wanted to go in front of her, or you might have wanted to go in front of her. You know what I'm saying? She's a lady. She's no nonsense. She goes by the law, and we're going to have a nice talk with her today. I'm talking about Judge Rebecca Stern. Welcome to Pimp Holic TV, and how you doing, ma'am?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for tuning in. Hey, now, I told you when I talked to you, I really want to have you on here, so I really want you to actually educate us on a bunch of things that people, us as a general public who are not, I guess, law-minded, we might see a case a certain way, but I would like to know things from a judge perspective, things that maybe you can say to us to like, you know what, I never looked at it that way. Whether I agree with this or not, I didn't know that they used that for the deciding factor. If that makes
Okay.
sense.
Sure.
I want to go across the board with things like that. But before we get into it, let's go back. What part of Chattanooga are you from?
Well, I was raised in the Ottawa
Okay.
area before
Okay.
there was even a freeway.
All right.
And I attended UTC undergraduate and UT Knoxville Law School.
Okay. So what made you want to be a lawyer? I mean, I'm sorry, a judge. Out of everything, what does a judge come from? Out of everything that you, what happened?
About being a judge. Well,
Yeah.
I'd been a prosecutor in the district attorney's office for almost 8 years. And I did the child abuse prosecution primarily for the first 4 years.
Okay.
And then prosecuted lots of other kinds of cases. And I just really love the criminal law, the courtroom, jury trials,
Right.
and sort of a natural progression, I guess. After several years, I thought that would be something I would be good at, something that I could offer the community. I had some good ideas, some creative solutions. I thought I had to address some of the revolving door that can be the criminal justice system.
Okay. Okay. Because from what I've seen, most prosecutors become lawyers. Most lawyers become prosecutors, and they both feel like they have a good advantage because as a lawyer, I've been a prosecutor before, so I know how the prosecutor thinks. Or as a prosecutor, I've been a lawyer before, so I know how he thinks. So I usually see a lot of, from what I've seen, lawyers and prosecutors ping pong or going across the table. I've never seen, from what I can remember, somebody go from a prosecutor to a judge. I've seen a lawyer go from a lawyer to a judge. I've never seen it. Yeah.
Yeah, there's actually been a lot of prosecutors that have become judges.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
You maybe just didn't know their background, but I can think of several people who started off that way, then maybe practiced law some other ways, but eventually became a judge. So
Okay.
it's kind of a natural progression for some prosecutors.
Okay. So let me ask you this: whether as a prosecutor or a judge, either or, what was your? You don't have to give any names, but what was your first big case? To let you know, okay, I'm in the big leagues now. Yeah.
Well, as a prosecutor, I was responsible for handling all the child abuse cases, both physical, like I tried some child homicide cases
Okay.
where children are the victim of violent crimes and homicide. I also tried several cases where children had been sexually abused, including aggravated rape cases.
Okay.
And those are about as high a level of felony you can get to try. As a prosecutor, I also, when life without parole became an option as a sentence, I was actually the first prosecutor in Hamilton County to get a conviction in a homicide case that led to life without parole rather than life in prison or the death penalty. That became an option.
What's up? What's up? I got to give a special shout out to my sponsor, the M Group LLC. Let me tell y'all about the M Group LLC. The M Group LLC is an independent distribution company that offers essential services such as internet, home security, energy, identity protection, wireless, and more. Secure your homes and businesses. Get a free consultation from my homegirl, Miss Nori. Email the mgroupllc@gmail.com to schedule your appointment. You can also visit www.isnorinori.com. Click the services tab to check out all the deals that they offer. Salute to my sponsor, the M Group LLC. Much love. Y'all go check them out. Yeah.
Okay.
And that was a pretty memorable, very violent homicide.
Okay. All right. As as a judge, when you're sitting on the stand as a judge and the evidence is presented before you, which of course the jury has to decide on the guilt or innocence verdict. Let's go with the innocent part first. Have you ever been sentenced? I mean, been there and the evidence has been presented, and you saying to yourself, even though you can't say it out loud, you're saying to yourself, I don't think this guy, this woman did this. I mean, the prosecutor's presenting a good case. This evidence doesn't add up to me, and they get found guilty, and you still have to sentence them.
Well, I won't say I can remember one where I thought I was trying a jury trial and I thought the person was completely innocent. But there have been times where I thought the person might have been overcharged. In other words, say it was a homicide case, but it was probably more likely a second degree, it was charged with a first degree murder maybe. And to me, it seemed like the evidence was there for second degree or voluntary manslaughter. And I've actually reduced, sometimes not very often, because the facts are for a jury to decide. But if I found the facts didn't add up to support a conviction, if the jury convicted them, I have been known to either declare a judgment of, acquittal, or more likely reduce it down to a lower level for it before I presented it to the jury to decide.
Okay. And that's nice to know. Well, let me flip the table. Have you ever been in a situation where in your heart you feel like the person was guilty, the evidence presented it, but they had a damn good lawyer and they walked?
Yes, I probably have seen that more than the other way around, but
Right.
that's our criminal justice system. And that's just for a jury to make a decision based on the evidence, and unless it's going to result in an unfair conviction, then I believe it's really within the jury's responsibility to decide if the evidence is there or not. So yeah, a couple of times I've been sort of surprised at the verdict, and probably would have gone the other way had it been me deciding it. But that's the way our system works.
Right.
I got to give a shout out to my sponsor, the Chattanooga Cigar Club. Again, the Chattanooga Cigar Club. Let me tell you all about the Chattanooga Cigar Club. The Chattanooga Cigar Club is Chattanooga's premier cigar and hookah lounge, open Thursday through Sunday, with ladies free on Friday and live music up until 10 o'clock. Keep in mind, you can also rent the building for your own events from Sunday through Wednesday. Shout out to my guys, D. Scott and Kurt at the Chattanooga Cigar Club. For more information, log on to ChattanoogaCigarClub.com. Again, salute to my sponsor, the Chattanooga Cigar Club. Much love. Yeah.
So I'll go back to what you said earlier. As a judge, like if you feel like you said, like somebody was overcharged or maybe found guilty when the evidence didn't really warrant that, how much power? All the power a judge can do is just give you the minimum sentence. You can't override the jury decision, right? If you really just wholeheartedly don't agree with what they did, can you?
Well, it's not entirely true.
Okay.
If a judge feels like there was not evidence to support the verdict, no evidence to support the verdict, in other words, it was completely verdict contrary to evidence presented, the judge can grant another trial.
Okay.
It's very rarely done, but the judge does have some power where that's concerned. But I think most judges respect the jury process. And if somebody requests a jury trial and they want the jury, either the defendant or the state, and they want the jury to decide, then mostly the judge acts in the role almost like a referee, where you make sure all of the rules are being followed, the rules of evidence and the rules of procedure. And you make sure that there is a factual basis for a jury to find guilt for sure. But usually, I mean, in reality, things don't usually go to a jury trial where there's no evidence whatsoever. I mean, it's usually enough evidence that the jury could find them guilty. Maybe I wouldn't have done it myself. I might have a different opinion, but it's up to the jury to make that decision in most cases. So,
okay, when somebody is found guilty of whatever kind of crime, as a judge, what determines whether they get the minimum or the maximum?
Well, the sentencing guidelines in Tennessee requires a judge to consider lots of different factors. And a lot of them, the biggest thing probably has to do with what their prior criminal history is.
Okay.
And all crimes are categorized by levels, particularly felonies. First degree murders in a level by itself. Then there's level A felonies, B felonies, C felonies, and depending on the person's prior record, which range they fall in. If it's their very first offense or second, they're usually within what's called range 1.
Okay.
If they've been around a while and have enough convictions to qualify, they become range 2, etc. And the guidelines set a sentence range for each of those felonies in each of those ranges. So a judge has to first determine what range the person is within their felony level and the range of punishment, and then has to consider lots of other factors, the facts at the trial, the other criminal behavior. There's a whole list of factors the judges take into consideration. They also have to take into consideration any mitigation. What kind of person is this? What efforts have they made towards rehabilitation in their life? What are the good things they've done in their lives? Whether there's some kind of special circumstances about this particular crime that should lead to, to lean towards a minimum versus a maximum sentence.
So, okay, when it comes to does somebody being a good person in the past, is that really going to determine that you go leaning on me if I just kill somebody?
Well, if you killed somebody and it was first degree murder, there's very few options. It's either life in prison, life without parole if the DA filed a notice requesting it, and then the jury decides the sentence in first degree murder cases.
Well,
unless the state's not seeking life without parole or the death penalty, then life, the only option in a first degree murder conviction is life. But if, say, you're convicted of second degree murder, you're convicted of reckless homicide, there's a range of punishment for that. And certainly any good things you've done in your life are taken into consideration in setting the ultimate sentence.
So So that really does matter. The fact that you were a good person, you did a bunch of community service, you used to help the church. You've been working all your life. You work with handicapped kids, and you happen to catch an aggravated assault charge. That would really help lessen your sentence. Look at what he just did, regardless of what he's done in the past. Look what he just did right now. So
it might affect it in the range. Like, it's not going to make them not convicted, or it's not going to take them in a range lower than whatever range they belong in based on their priors. But it is one thing that the judge can look at when they determine within the range, do you set a sentence more towards the lower end or the upper end of the sentence?
Okay. So that's helped you kind of range decisions right there based on what you've seen.
Well, that's one of the things. There's lots of factors to consider. But that is certainly one thing that should be taken into consideration. Whether this is sort of an abnormal thing, an unusual thing that this person did, given their entire background. You definitely look at that. And you also look at it in terms of sentencing alternatives, like maybe not just the actual number that you give them, like number of years, but whether or not they should be considered for alternative sentences like house arrest or community service or probation, supervised probation. There are lots of other alternatives to incarceration for most offenses that are below the B level offenses. There are a lot of B felony offenses that aren't eligible for alternative sentencing. There are some, but if you're convicted of a C felony or less, it certainly gets taken into consideration on whether or not you're, sent to the penitentiary or whether or not you're given some other alternative sentence.
Hey, one thing I've always wanted to know, once people are found guilty, and because I've been asked this a lot, he go get sentenced tomorrow. Comes write a note or something to the judge to speak on his character as a character witness. Do that really help? Do that really help with the sentence? Do that? Let me say this for you.
Okay.
The last time I did that, my friend, he might know what I'm talking about when he see this. He called a drug case, a federal drug case, and I guess a few people were supposed to write notes to give them to his family to turn into the judge. And I actually didn't do it because I was thinking like, man, you got to call you what this. They don't. This Now, you know what I'm saying? Yeah, all they know is you got allegedly got caught doing this or saying this or whatever. So you give to that according to them. Now, us writing a letter saying you so nice and man, that's not finna let them say, okay, you're gonna get 5 years instead of 10. I don't believe that. So I want to ask the judge, do that really help? So I can know forward if I get asked to do that I'm really helping you out. You know what I'm saying?
Well, I think the judge is supposed to consider everything, and sometimes it depends on who it is writing the letter. If it's your brother or your mother, of course they're going to be on your side and they're going to, feel biased towards you. But sometimes if you get a letter from somebody like their minister or somebody that's known them a long time and basically says to you, this person, has been a good person in the past. This person has, the ability to be rehabilitated. This person, I'm willing to, sometimes a preacher, minister, teacher will come in and say, I've known this person all their life and they just recently kind of went the wrong way. And I'd be willing to kind of mentor them and look out for them. It might affect how they serve their sentence. Maybe not.
Okay.
It's not you're going to suddenly go, oh, well, you can just walk free, no conviction for you because you got a letter that says you're a great person. But what it might tell you is, what has this person been in the past? Are they open for some kind of rehabilitation of their behavior? Are there people in the community that are willing to work with them and kind of supervise them and sort of mentor them and help them get out of that particular lifestyle? So I'd say some letters have a minimal effect. I don't think just a pile of 50 letters from a bunch of friends and neighbors and family members may make a huge difference, but somebody who could sort of offer you some help or part of a solution to dealing with this person's sentence might have some influence on that.
Okay. Yeah, I get it. Have you ever been in a situation where you had to sentence somebody and whatever range they fell under, you gave them that, and then you went back and thought about it, it's like, if I could have did that different, I probably would have gave this instead of that, or I would have handled it this way. Have you ever regretted a decision basically after the fact when you just had to sit down and just thought about it? Like,
I can't think of one off the top of my head, but I know that if I did that, I would try to figure out a way to remedy it. I would try to figure something out, but I mean, you always, as a judge, want to make sure you're doing the right thing. And it's a heavy burden. People's lives are in your hands. And you have to, it weighs heavy on you sometimes. But I don't recall ever making a decision and then going back and thinking, oh my goodness, I did something terrible here and I'm just going to live with it. If I did something that I thought later I should have done something different, I would try to figure out a way to remedy it.
Okay, you just said something important. You say as a judge, it weighs heavy on you because people's lives are in your hand. So with that being said, you can answer for yourself personally or what you think when it comes to other judges. When it comes to a judge, is it just a job, or do you really go home thinking, man, I just sentenced him to 45 years? Does it you got answers already, but I guess I'm speaking as judges in general. Okay, some people can give people 150 years and not think nothing about it because it's the job. You were found guilty. They say the charge carries this, I give you that. Okay, next person up. And it's nothing. There's no conscience that goes into it or nothing. It's really a job. So how many people do you think look at it as a job?
There's sometimes if you have, I never saw it as just a job. Okay. There have been times where I sentenced someone that was a particularly violent or heinous person, and I didn't feel bad about the fact, that they got a steep sentence because that's what I believe they should get. I'll tell you one thing that happened early on in my judge career. I tried a murder case, and I won't go into names of the people, but the person was charged with murdering his wife. Okay. And all through the trial, he was on trial for the murder of his wife and the mother of his 2 children. And every day, those children who were very young at the time came and sat in the courtroom and watched the trial, and they totally believed in their father's innocence. And I thought that we resolved lots of legal issues and had lots of hearings and things, and it finally went to the jury, and the jury convicted him. And I think there was adequate evidence for the jury to convict him, but it broke my heart for the little girls. And I went back literally after the jury rendered their verdict of guilty, and I knew I had to come out and sentence him to life in prison because that was the only option for him. I went in my office and cried because I felt so bad for the children who'd lost their mother and now their father.
Right.
And that was very, very hard. And it was definitely not just a job. It was a very difficult, emotional thing for me.
Okay. And people need to hear that type of stuff because, some people love judges like, man, she could have gave me this, but she let me slide with this. I've heard about you a few times, to be honest with you. And then some people hate them because they feel like you just threw me away like it was nothing. So that's why I want to kind of ask that question and let people learn. I guess people who don't know anything about it, the judges are still humans too. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Sure.
I just say to hurt you have to get this guy a life sentence, but that's all you did because it came with the job. So you had to, but at the end of the day, the conscience made you, it still did something to you. You know what I'm saying? And I want people to kind of hear stuff like that.
Right.
Things like this, while I was saying, I want to ask you things from the mind of a judge so we can know what y'all are thinking sometimes.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying? Because we come in with a one-track mind. Like, if he can go in front of this lady, it's going to go good or bad. If it goes bad, I'm not going to see him for a long time. And you can't show any emotion in the court. You have to stay, stern face. So I always want to know how y'all feel. Yeah. I got another question. When you're trying a high-profile case, when it comes to the defendant, do it matter to you? Do you look at it different if you have a paid lawyer versus a public defender?
Oh, absolutely not. Some of the best lawyers in town actually are some of the public defenders. One of the very best attorneys I've ever seen in action is in the public defender's office here.
Okay.
He's as good or better than any paid lawyer I've ever seen.
Really?
And a couple others are just that good, and they work hard. Most of them do a good job. Some are trial lawyers more than others, and the ones who try the cases are generally really good trial lawyers. And they have, the nice thing about the public defender's office, a lot of people don't realize, they have a staff of people, investigators and services available to help that sometimes paid lawyers don't have available to them so easily. So
really? Oh, okay.
Yeah. And so sometimes, I can't say, somebody might get a public defender, and that particular, in their public defender they are assigned to or appointed attorney that the court appoints, maybe they don't feel that, that their attorney's working hard for them. I think most of them work very hard, but I think sometimes the people feel like if I have a court appointed or public defender, that I'm not getting as good a lawyer.
That's how they feel. Exactly how they feel.
Some people feel that way. And in our public defender's office, there are lots of very good attorneys. And if I were charged with a crime, this one particular one, but some of the others too, I would just as soon have them for my attorney as any of the paid attorneys.
Okay, that's
private paid attorneys, I should say.
Well, let me ask you this: there's a few questions I want to ask you, but first, do the public defenders get paid less than a paid lawyer? Is it a
well? Paid lawyers can negotiate whatever fee they want,
right?
With their client or that their client can afford. So, I think for paid lawyers, there's such a huge range, and depending on what level of crime it is, what the lawyer's going to charge, or how much experience the person has, or how famous they are locally, they get more money. The public defenders are like the district attorneys in that they are paid according to state law and according to how many years they've been in the office. So they get raises ever so often based on their seniority and how long they've been there.
And the reason I'm asking this stuff, a lot of people gonna want to hear this right here and get clarification on this. Like, and I hear this from dudes who catch cases all the time. Like, it's just people, whether I know them or not. This is the whole thing, Mr. Stern. Like, this is the whole mindset. Yeah, I wouldn't know what a public defender, but he wasn't fighting this hard for him. I had to fire him and get a paid lawyer. The public defender went there and came back on the first date, first 1 or 2 court dates, to try to get me to cop out. He didn't even want to hear my side. I had to go get me a paid lawyer because they went and fought it. They went to trial and fought it for me. He just tried to get me to cop out the first time I ran, the first meeting we had. He comes to the table saying, I will take this instead of fighting and going to trial and trying to get me off. But that's the difference between the public defender and the paid lawyer. This is how people think. You know what I'm saying? This is how
I think that happens sometimes. I do think that happens sometimes. And the one drawback is you have some really great public defenders, but they are also way overworked. They have huge caseloads.
Right.
And what happens is they may be as interested in their client as a paid lawyer. They're dividing their time usually among so many clients, and paid lawyers don't have to have, because they make more and they decide what cases they're going to take. They generally get paid more. I mean, it's whatever they negotiate, but they usually take what they feel like they have time to work on. In other words, the public defenders assign their percentage of the cases, and there's lots and lots of cases.
Right.
Whereas a paid lawyer, maybe the public defender's handling 20, 30, 40. I mean, I'm not sure what each of their caseloads are, but they handle a lot of cases. And a paid lawyer might maybe they've got half of that many clients or less that they're having to deal with. So of course they're going to have a little more time to put into it. I mean, that's the only drawback about, appointed attorneys or public defenders, is just the huge caseloads that they carry.
Okay. If I got a high profile case, I don't want a guy who got 75 other cases where I'm pretty much a number for him. And because he probably won't go as hard. But the other side, I don't have $100,000 to pay this guy either for the charge that I have. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I see that that's a dilemma. I see that every day dealing with in the courtroom and dealing with people who want to hire me, and they're trying, they maybe have gotten appointed attorney, but they feel like they're not getting enough time with their attorney, and they want somebody who will take a little more time. And it's, that's always the dilemma,
So somebody's in your courtroom and they're in a situation like that. How many times do you allow them, with knowing that they can probably go through stuff like that? How many times do you allow them to fire their attorney before you say, okay, we no more, we're going forward now?
There's no set amount. I think what I try to do is look at the circumstances. I try to talk to the attorney with their client there and try to ask if there's a way they might come to some kind of understanding and resolve it. So, because every time you do that, this attorney's already spent this much time on a case, taken it away from possibly other people or divided up among all their clients. And now you're just going to sort of start all over again with another attorney. So partly depends on what the conflict with their attorney has become, whether or not I think it's a legitimate complaint against their attorney, or if they're just wanting to drag it out and drag their feet. Now, some people want to delay the inevitable, and some people have unreasonable expectations, and maybe they don't like the fact that there's evidence against them, and they think somehow because the attorney can't work a magic trick for them, that there's something wrong with them, and somehow a paid attorney can do something different. I haven't seen the DAs giving offers, like plea agreement offers, better to paid attorneys versus public defenders.
You haven't? Really?
Mm-mm.
Wow.
But I mean, sometimes the paid lawyers are really good trial lawyers, and might be more effective in trial, because just some lawyers are just better in the courtroom with a jury trial than others. And so sometimes I've seen people with paid lawyers, because they hire somebody who's just particularly talented at jury trials, do well. But the district attorneys, when they're plea bargaining or making negotiations, I don't think they negotiate, generally any better on their cases. They don't make offers to a paid lawyer like, oh, I'm going to, offer this person a whole lot better bargain than this person.
Okay. Well, with that being said, I'm picking your brain left and right. People are going to love to hear this information, because they need to know this. For one, keep yourself out the criminal system. But if you know some of the things that you're up against, and if you have to go that route again. Okay,
Yeah.
to go off of what you just said, like, I've also heard a lot of people say, like, say if we got 3 lawyers, man, you ought to hire a lawyer too, because he's cool with a bunch of the DAs, so he'll get you a lighter sentence. Is that you understand what I'm saying? Have you ever?
Yeah, I
It's been
mean,
said a lot. I've heard that a lot.
everybody's human,
Right.
and some private attorneys and even public defenders get along with some better with DAs than others. Like, I mean, I find that in my case, there's just some prosecutors that I just click with a little better, and they listen to me a little more, and I get heard a little bit better, and try to come up with alternatives. And sometimes I try to, negotiate. Like, they make me an offer, I try to do a counter offer, I try to get something that's better for my client. And some of the prosecutors will listen and some won't. Well, another attorney might come in and talk to a prosecutor that's just not dealing with me very well, and somehow they click or they listen to that attorney. I mean, but that's just because of human nature,
Right,
probably.
Right.
Yeah.
So as a judge in general, not necessarily you, but judges in general, would you say a judge's decision is based on the relationship they have with the lawyer or the prosecutor? What I mean by that is like a prosecutor just found somebody guilty and the sentence is 8 to 12 years. He's pushing for 12 years to max. But you and this prosecutor don't really click too much. You got a better relationship with the lawyer, so you're gonna give the minimum, the 8 years. It's based, and it's really based on. It's not about the. It's based on the relationship with the prosecutor or the lawyer. Not necessarily you. I'm saying judges in general.
I know. Well, I'm going to tell you that I think that is very tempting sometimes, to punish the lawyer or reward a lawyer, depending on how they act in the courtroom, or
Right.
how you feel about them as a person, whether you think they're an honest person or whether you think they're, shady or something. It is tempting as a judge, but I think as a judge, you have to realize, no matter how you feel about the attorney involved, whether you like them or hate them, that you still got to be fair to their client. It's not fair to take out and either be more lenient on somebody because you like their attorney, or more hard on them in their sentencing because you don't like their attorney.
Right.
And human nature makes you feel like you want to do that, but I think judges must resist that.
Okay. Have you ever, in all of your years, had to sentence somebody, and then years later, for whatever reason, the sentence was overturned because of an appeal or because of the loophole?
Yeah, a few cases over the years. Yeah, I mean, that's going to happen to every judge. What they appeal is legal decisions you make generally about procedure or evidence, and so you can get overturned. They don't overturn acquittals, obviously. Someone's not convicted or they're found not guilty, no one appeals it, right?
Right.
So if someone's convicted on a murder case, they always appeal it. And I've been overturned a couple of times just because the Court of Criminal Appeals didn't agree with, maybe I let some evidence in that I thought was appropriate, but they didn't think was appropriate. That happens to everybody.
So the case get overturned, the person gets acquitted of the charges, gets sentence reduced.
It usually what happens is, well, it depends on what they're overturning. If they are reversing you only on the not on the jury conviction, but just on the sentence, they send it back for resentencing and give you some guidelines. Like they'll tell the judge that the judge used some improper factors or gave the improper weight to a factor, and that they need to do another sentencing hearing and resentence.
Right.
Or if they feel like the judge made mistakes in the procedure or the evidence during the jury trial, and that somehow they were unfairly convicted because of that, then they will send it back for a whole new trial. The person isn't acquitted. The Court of Criminal Appeals cannot convict them. They can just reverse it.
Okay.
And then you have to go back, and retry.
Every time somebody gets found guilty of a murder, robbery, whatever, especially murder charges, the first thing is the appeal. Like I be thinking to myself, man, by the time you get back in court on the appeal, you're gonna be done half the time already. Like what takes so long for an appeal to go through? Like, you appeal now 2022, it might not get heard to 2030. Did 8 years already, man. Like,
Well, usually that means it's been through lots of different appeals. In other words, on a murder case, especially if it's a death penalty or life without parole, they have the immediate right to appeal, and then they can try to appeal to the Supreme Court. And then if the Tennessee Supreme Court rejects taking their case, they can do what's called a post-conviction, where they basically say, I didn't get a fair trial because I had a crappy lawyer. And so they try to get acquitted because they didn't get a fair trial, not because the judge did anything wrong, but because their attorney did something wrong. So there's just lots of different things that people will try to bring up after the fact, so that there's no final ending, totally done with, resolution, sometimes for several years. Part of that's the sheer volume, and part of it is just because people like to litigate. They're sitting sometimes in jail and don't have a lot of other interesting things to do, and they just like to file stuff.
man, pretty much when they got you, it's over with, man. You can file all you want to, but man, it's over with. And they're gonna drag you out so long to by the time you come back in front of the trial, in front of the appeal, you go for parole next year anyway, man. You spent I done seen it, man. I done seen it. Like, man, I done seen it. It's just be crazy to me, man. Let me ask you this. So how man, listen, how credible is the testimony of an informant or a snitch?
Well, I think that it depends on lots of factors about that snitch. Like, I would have to know more about, or a jury really is usually the one that decides that.
Right.
And so the jury usually gets to know kind of what their motive is. Why are they snitching? What are they getting out of it? Usually they're getting a reduced sentence or a dismissal on their case, right? So that definitely hurts their credibility. But the juries, when a judge instructs a jury on how to judge credibility, they're told to look at lots of different factors, including what's their motive to tell the truth or what's their motive to lie, and have they been inconsistent, in the past? Are they inconsistent in their story to begin with and now? There's lots of things a jury is instructed to take into consideration, one of them being the motive.
Yeah, I've always wondered how much, because like on the outside looking in, I'm thinking, my mindset is, man, this dude's gonna tell you whatever you want to hear to get out of his charge, and you're gonna actually use this testimony to convict this person. Like, what I'm saying? This dude is trying to get his time cut. If you want me to say Rebecca Stern robbed a SunTrust, I will do that if you're gonna cut my time. And y'all can figure out later on down the line that she didn't do it. I'm just trying to tell y'all whatever y'all want to hear to cut this time. Yeah, Jamal killed the police. She went and murdered the pastor. Whatever y'all want to hear, yes, he did it.
Well, a lot of times informants are used to corroborate other evidence. In other words, it's not just the snitch's word, that they're told. It's the snitch's word along with other evidence that maybe, supports what the snitch told. So the jury's also told, like, when you're listening to a witness, think about whether there's other evidence that corroborates what they're saying. Right. So I think it would be very hard to convict somebody of a crime based only on a snitch's testimony who's going to get something out of it themselves.
Well, snitches have got a lot of people charged with crimes that they've actually had to go to court and beat, but people have been picked up.
That's true, but usually there is more evidence. They may tell something, and that leads to developing other evidence in the case. In other words, somebody might come to the police and say, I can tell you who committed this murder if you'll lighten up on my drug case. And they come in and give evidence, but then the police don't usually just go, okay, we're going to arrest that person now because this guy said so. But it leads them to other evidence. In other words, they start looking at cameras, and they start looking at talking to certain witnesses, or they try to corroborate the snitch's testimony. It leads them into sometimes leads them to other evidence that corroborates the snitch's evidence.
Right. And I've seen situations too where people have been told on by somebody that they didn't even know. Like, man, like they brought Rebecca to the court on me. She testified, and they brought somebody named Jamie. I don't even know this lady. She got on the stand and said I did it too. I never even seen her in my life, but her testimony stuck, and I know the lady. Like one guy I know, say guy A, he was on a charge with guy B. These two. Guy B was on another separate charge with guy C. So guy C came to court and said whatever against guy B and said something against guy A. And the guy was like, I don't even know this guy. I know the guy you got me charged with, but that guy, I don't even know him. How is his testimony going to convict me? I don't know this guy. He's on the charge with my charge partner, but I've never seen this dude.
Right.
You know,
well, hopefully through cross-examination and other witness, that can be brought to light in front of the jury, that's not, that maybe it's a mistaken identity, maybe there's a motive for naming this innocent person. I mean, that's sort of the duty of the lawyers to refute, that kind of evidence.
Okay. Now I got a few cases I want to ask you about, high profile, not your cases, but high profile cases. And I want you to just kind of educate us from a judge or legal perspective. The first one, like Ahmaud Arbery case that happened down in Georgia, where they hunted the guy down and shot him, the guy running through the neighborhood. Was that a cut and dry case of guilt right there as a judge, or was it still things to weigh out before convicting these type of guys?
What you mean for the jury to? If you're on the jury,
was that a cut and dry?
Because obviously it was a jury trial, and the judge didn't make the decision about guilt.
Right, that's what I mean. Yeah, okay.
But I watched almost all of that trial on Trial TV or one of the crime TV shows, and it made it look, as always, you hear things in the media before the trial, but in this case, when you see him, I felt like the jury was very justified in their verdict after watching the video presented. And so I think that's, people are jump to conclusions in high profile cases about hearing some of the facts, and they need to wait and hear or see the whole thing. I don't think you can make a decision in high profile cases unless you pretty much watch the whole trial.
Okay.
And I watched the whole trial, and I feel like if I were on the jury, I definitely would have convicted at least the father and the son. If I were on the jury, the one guy I think was less culpable, the one that was videotaping, but we're kind of getting in the weeds here for someone who didn't watch the whole trial and know the.
Yeah, I know about the guy's videos. Yeah, I know about that. Yeah.
Videos are very either helpful for the prosecution or helpful for the defense. Videos nowadays, everything's just practically on video, and you can see it with your own eyes.
Right.
And I think that's a good thing.
Yeah. So let me ask you this, and say the George Zimmerman case, which is kind of a similar case, followed the guy, it was a Trayvon Martin guy, shot him. Now again, us who were just in the public watching this, we heard the 911 phone call where the dispatcher said, don't follow the guy, let him, whatever, basically don't follow him, leave him alone, call the police.
Yeah.
Did the exact opposite, followed him and shot him. To us, that's a cut and dry case, you're guilty. So as a judge, explain the loopholes of what maybe happened, how he was able to get out of that. What could have, what were some things?
It's been a while, and I hate to speak to it because I'm not sure I remember the facts well enough to remember exactly. I mean, I remember the case, but I don't remember specifically enough facts to give you an answer to that.
Okay. Let me go back even further. The trial of the century, the O.J. Simpson case. Now, I think that caused a big racial divide in the country too, because everybody wanted guilt, everybody wanted innocence, depending on what side of the fence you're on.
Right.
Now, initially coming into it, it was like it's so much evidence at the murder scene, evidence at his house, the bloody glove, the Bronco, all this. It was so much evidence, and it looked like guilt. I think the turning point was when they exposed Mark Furman.
Yeah, I do too.
I think that was a turning point. And so my next question to you would have been, I guess outside that, what do you think My question is, what is the loophole to help him beat the case? What do you feel guilty and innocent? Like, what helped him beat it? Was it because the race card that they played, which seemed to be pretty much effective against this police, or was it just what do you think?
Well, you know what? It's hard for me to say, of course, because I wasn't on the jury, but I think the big problem with Mark Furman was, yes, he did make racial slurs and he did do some inappropriate things, but the worst thing is he lied about it. He said
Right.
he had never done that.
Right. Right.
And if he would have said something, in my opinion, if he would have said something like, yes, we've all made mistakes and we all have a tendency to spout off sometimes and say things that are cruel or inappropriate or racist or something, and he'd acknowledged it, that he had done it, not lied about it, then it might have turned out differently, because what happened is once he lied about it, his credibility, was gone. And
Right.
he's the one who found the bloody glove behind the house, right? So
Right.
if you're lying about something important that they later can show him on tape doing,
Right.
then there's a tendency to say, well, if he lied about that, maybe he lied about this too.
Right. Right.
And so I think that's where it wasn't just the fact that Mark Furman made derogatory racial remarks, which is bad enough. I'm not sure that would have turned the whole trial. I think the fact he lied was the important key.
Okay. Okay.
Because once a witness lies, that's a lot of times the end of your case, one way or whichever side you're on. If it's shown that your witness lied, it just really damages your case, because credibility is everything, in a trial.
Right. 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 And another thing, after the OJ verdict, it was a press conference. John Carpenter, it might have been the press conference that came right after the court, after the verdict. But I saw a press conference or interview he did where he said, and this kind of got me right here. He was like, the thing he based the case off of was the evidence. Like, they had so much evidence against it, but it ended up being too much evidence. One man couldn't have made all those mistakes. And I was like, damn, that's a good way. That's reverse psychology, right? Because it seems so perfect. Glove here, glove at your house, bloody sock in your bedroom with the stain in it that matching the cold blood. Like, this is cut and dry. But at the end of the day, if I'm a criminal, that is stupid right there.
It's almost too good to be true for
Right.
the prosecutor.
Right. Right.
I mean, no, I think that was a clever argument. That was a clever argument.
Yeah. Because initially, everybody, it's over with. He's guilty. But then he took their own evidence and used it against them and said it's just too much. I never heard of too much evidence before. I thought that's conviction. You got too much evidence.
That's the first time I ever heard that argument too. It was pretty clever.
Yeah, it was real smooth. Yeah, I was like, okay, I get it. Now, another question. When it comes to the George Floyd situation, what's the guy, Derek Chauvin? How did it? Again, I can ask you this as a judge. How did he not get the maximum sentence?
Without knowing all of like I said before, when a judge looks at what you're going to sentence somebody for,
right,
the maximum is usually when you meet all or most of these factors you're to consider. Right, and the fact that he had done good things in the past and he had not been convicted of any criminal offenses in the past, that weighs towards the lower end of a sentence by law. That the judges are supposed to basically presume. Now, keep in mind too, you're asking me some about cases in other states.
Right.
And what's important for everybody to know is state law in every state differs some.
Right.
And so when I'm thinking about a case and trying to answer your question, I'm thinking of it from a Tennessee law perspective, and there could be a better answer based on the law wherever their jurisdiction. I forgot where that took place. Was that in Georgia?
No, Minnesota.
Well, they have a different, maybe some similar, but I don't know that their sentencing guidelines are the same as ours. Okay. So I can't answer specifically, but I'm saying they probably have some kind of sentencing guidelines that say something to the effect of, like ours do, if it's somebody's very first offense, you sort of start with the presumption of a lesser sentence.
Right.
And then if there's factors that make you should enhance the sentence, then you look at those and adjust the sentence upward depending on what whatever bad factors there are for the person.
Right. Okay. Gotcha.
So he probably had some good things in his favor too.
Right.
It may be hard to believe by
Yeah,
what he did.
I
but
understand that. I understand.
yeah.
I understand. You know, when you look at a video like that, you just think, oh, that's just so hard, and they ought to just give it to him. But then, according to the law, what you're saying makes sense. You know what I'm saying?
Well, I know in Tennessee, you have to, for most crimes, sometimes you start at mid-range, and sometimes you're supposed to presume the minimum. Sometimes you're supposed to start at the mid-range, and then you go up or down on the sentence depending on the enhancement factors that make it worse, or mitigation factors that tell you maybe it should be a little less.
Right. Okay.
So,
I got to ask you one more question from a prosecutor standpoint. How often do I've always wondered this when the charge is brought and it's a prosecutor's job to prosecute. And again, it goes back to what I asked you: is this a job or is it, how much of is your conscience into it? So as a prosecutor, you hand me the paperwork. Here's the next case right here. Try this case, and I look at it and I say, this evidence doesn't seem like guilt to me. Do I still try the case because it's my job to do that, knowing in my heart that I don't think the case that I've been told to try, I don't think this guy did it. But it's my job as a prosecutor to try the case. But based on evidence,
well, you mean as a prosecutor?
Yeah.
As a prosecutor, if you think the person's not guilty?
Yeah, right. Do you still try the case?
As a prosecutor, you have an ethical duty. If you don't believe that the evidence supports a conviction, you have an ethical duty to either reduce it to what the evidence supports, or if you think the person's innocent, you're supposed to dismiss the case. And I, as a prosecutor, dismissed many cases that I didn't think the person did it, or that the state, or that we could at least prove it.
Okay.
As a prosecutor, they're supposed to do, prosecutors have a unique duty. They're not just supposed to worry about winning. They're supposed to worry about doing justice. I'm not saying they all do.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what they're supposed to do.
Right.
Even if it means dismissing a case or losing giving up a case, if it's unfair or unjust and they know it, they have a duty, an ethical duty to not prosecute.
Okay. Well, before we get out of here, I got to do one more thing with you. This is called the Pick One Challenge. So I'm going to name two things, and I want you to pick one. Okay? Two things, you pick one. You ready?
We can discuss this. Let's see. Let's hear it.
You're going to like it. First one, Hamilton Place or Eastgate? Pick one.
Hamilton Place.
Buffalo Wild Wings or Champy's?
That's a hard one. Pretty much a tie on that one, I think.
A tie? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Walter Williams or Gerald Webb?
No, I'm not gonna. I like both of them.
Channel 3 News or Channel 9 News?
I don't watch a lot of the local news either. I watch a lot of national news.
Okay.
So you're gonna get me in trouble and get me on somebody's bad side now.
I got another one. If I'm a defendant and I'm coming in court, I need you to pick one. Do I want to go in front of Judge Doug Meyer or Rebecca Stern?
Well, both of them were wonderful judges, so I'd say you're in good shape either way.
Okay. Pick one. Lawyer or prosecutor?
Well, I enjoy the prosecution standpoint myself, but I've been doing criminal defense work for 5.5 years or so now. And, I've had a good time doing it too. So they each have their good points.
Okay. Court bailiff or correction officer?
Oh, court bailiff is so much easier.
Judge
Correction officer is really hard.
Judge Judith or Judge Marilyn Mignon?
I don't know the second one.
You don't?
No.
Judge Mignon, Marilyn Mignon. Okay.
No, I don't know that.
Okay. Judge Joe Brown or Judge Mathis?
Or Judge who?
Mathis, Greg Mathis.
I know Joe Brown because he's actually a judge in Memphis, I believe, or
Okay.
was a judge in Memphis. I don't know. I don't really have. I don't have an opinion on either way on that one.
You don't know Judge? You don't know who Judge Mathis is? He's the biggest judge
I'm
on
not
TV.
sure I do. Who is it?
Okay. Judge Greg. He's from Detroit. But he has a show on TV. Been on
Yeah.
for like he's real big. Yeah, real big. Yeah.
Yeah. As you can tell, I sit and read a lot of books, and I don't watch a lot of television or listen to a lot of music.
Gotcha.
So you're gonna catch me on all these.
Well, I got
pop
one last
culture
one.
questions.
Hopefully you know these two. I got one last one. If you can pick one. People's Court or Divorce Court?
People's Court.
People's Court.
Yeah.
People's Court. Gotcha. Well, that was the Pick One Challenge with Judge Rebecca Stern. I want to thank you for tuning in so much. I really appreciate your time and you coming on here to educate us, on the legal system, the law, and us thinking like a judge, So I really appreciate you. And you got a campaign coming up. You're running for re-election, right? So you want to give us a little bit about that?
Well, I'm not the incumbent. I was a judge for 17 years, and then in 2015, I'd put in enough years with the state to retire, and that sounded good at the time. But after a year, I just really missed the courtroom. I missed jury trials. I missed my colleagues, and I just felt like I needed a purpose in life. And so I started a law practice, and that's what I've been practicing law for 5.5 years, doing criminal defense work.
Okay.
Judge Poole, Don Poole, who's been on the bench quite a while in Division 3, is retiring, and so it's an open seat. So
Okay.
I thought, I love that job. I didn't quit because I didn't retire because I didn't like the job. I did. And I thought, I'd love another chance to do that again. You didn't ask me about the drug court. I started the drug court in Hamilton County in Division 2 when I was a judge.
Explain that, 'cause I didn't know that.
Okay. Do you still have time, or do you want to?
Yeah,
come
no.
back on that?
Go
All
ahead.
right. My biggest accomplishment, I think, was in Division 2 when I was a judge for 17 years. One thing that I saw was the criminal justice system for certain types of people, nonviolent people charged with crimes it was fueled by drug addiction, mostly property crimes, prostitution, some burglaries and things like that, nonviolent. I thought there would be a better solution than just warehousing them in prison. That generally I found by being a prosecutor and on the bench that people were not coming out of prison cured of their drug addictions and would go right back in it and be just as bad or worse. Now, for violent criminals, sometimes punishment's the only way, or to get them off the streets, they present a different scenario.
Right.
But for nonviolent offenders, it's still like, I don't want my property stolen. I don't want my car stolen. I don't want to be burglarized. I understand people don't want that. But the problem is, would it be better to get this person rehabilitated and out of the criminal justice system, and where they're like productive citizens, they're working, they're taking care of their families, instead of being a drain on our community? So I was introduced in like probably 2002 or 2003, I started learning about drug courts around the country, and they're considered problem-solving courts, and they operate in a way that's sort of non-adversarial, where everybody's kind of a team, a prosecutor, police officers, public defender, and the judges. You all work together and get to know these people that are nonviolent offenders that are drug addicted, and you try to find ways to address the drug addiction over a long period of time under very strict circumstances with lots of rules and lots of accountability. And it's usually a program that'll last 1 to 2 years. And the person has to basically follow they're assigned kind of a plan over the course of a year or two that they have to do. And they're drug screened regularly. They have to be getting a job. They have to open a bank account. They have to start paying child support if they haven't been. They have to start trying to get back with their kids if they haven't. And I went to several trainings around the country and saw how drug courts worked, and became very convinced that for nonviolent offenders who were in the system because of drug addiction, that this was the way to go. And so I was able in 2005 to establish the Hamilton County Drug Court or Recovery Court, where we took now hundreds and hundreds of people that have gone through the program, usually at the end of their rope. They're heading to the penitentiary. They've gotten in so much trouble. They failed out of community corrections. They fell out of probation, all kinds of things because they can't pass drug screens. They don't keep jobs and things like that. Now, because of the Hamilton County Drug Court, we graduated back when I was a judge, and even since then, Judge Greenholtz handles it now. Hundreds of people have graduated, and most of them are still doing well. Most of them are still in recovery. Most of them have gotten custody back of their children. They're paying child support. They're working. And a lot of times they're giving back to the community and doing for others and helping other addicts. So that's my proudest accomplishment. Division 3, Judge Poole has been presiding over a mental health court, which could also include like veterans if they have PTSD or something that's driving them to be somehow in the criminal justice system. And the mental health court is sort of modeled after in a drug court, kind of a problem solving court like drug court, where you take nonviolent offenders and you try to get them assessed properly, treated properly, and you monitor them for a long period of time and try to get their mental health, if not cured, at least under control and managed, so that they're not committing crimes. And so that's one of the things that Division 3 judge will do. And I just feel like that's what I did for drug court in Division 2, and something I feel like I can do a good job in Division 3 for.
I'm glad you brought it up. I didn't know that. Okay, yeah. So Rebecca Stern is trying to help. y'all, she's trying to help. Okay, I really didn't know that. I didn't know that. That's a good thing right there, man. Because some people don't deserve that.
Google it. And if you look at my website, my campaign website, it has testimonials from several of the graduates, before and after pictures, and telling you what they're doing now.
Name the website so we can go to. What's the website?
Sternjudge.com.
Sternjudge.com.
Yes.
Sternjudge.com. Okay, I'll make that. I'll put it on the screen too. Sternjudge.com. Go to the website and check her out. When is the election coming up? When is it?
May 3rd is the primary. I'm running in the Republican primary.
Okay.
So if somebody wants to vote for me, hopefully they will. I'll be on the. But you have to. If you usually vote Democrat, you got to cross over and vote in the Republican primary. If you want me back on the bench.
Okay. All right.
And so whoever wins the primary, that's May 3rd, will win the whole thing, because there's no Democrat opponent in my particular race. There's only.
Who are you running against? Who are you running against?
Who am I running against? Boyd Patterson and Amanda Dunn.
Floyd Patterson.
There are 3 of us in the Republican primary. Okay. And it's May 3rd, and early voting starts April 13th.
Okay. All right, Rebecca Stern. Good luck with the campaign. Good luck.
Thank you.
Before we get out here, leave us your social media information, your emails, and say the website again, so we can make sure everybody get all of that. Yeah.
You want me to say this now on the air?
Yeah.
Okay, my website is just www, but you don't really have to put that, Stern Judge. So if you want a judge that's stern, vote for me, sternjudge.com.
All right.
My email address is sternjudge2022@gmail.com.
Okay.
And you can find me on Facebook by just putting Stern Judge or Stern Judge 2022. I think it's about the same.
Okay.
There you can find me on Facebook.
All right. Well, again, thank you for your time, y'all. That was Judge Rebecca Stern. She's educated us and gave us a whole lot of game. Campaign is coming up again in April, so she's on the ballot. You're gonna see her back in this hot seat. Go vote for her. And it is the Pimpoholic Tv Podcast. So again, before we get out here, subscribe to my website, www.mallthepimp.com. Also go to my YouTube channel, which is Pimpoholic TV, and make sure you follow me on Instagram and Twitter @mallthepimp. And we out of here. Yeah.